Hey, what's up guys? Mark Burnett here, and today I'm back with another video, and it's going to be an overview of a new painting tool that I found that is free, and it is called Verve. So I will try to go over all the features of this tool and try to explain, what everything does a little bit here, and then a little bit later this week I'm going to be doing a speed painting using that tool to see what we can do with this. And so a little bit of an introduction for this. I have nothing to do with the development of this tool. I'm just I just found it and it's pretty cool, so I'm sharing it with you guys. It's free, like I said, and it's very early on in development. So you'll see it's missing a lot of features, such as you can't even import images. You can just save as. You can't. What else? All the hotkeys are kind of messed up. For now, it's like a bunch of temp stuff. If you want to delete the layer, for example, there's no delete button. You have to click it and drag it out the window, and then it asks you if you want to delete. So that kind of stuff. But like I said, it's an early version. It's it's not even a beta yet. I think it's alpha, and but for what it is already, it's very interesting, and obviously the appeal that it is free. So let's dive in a little bit. So the main idea with this tool is that it's a GPU physics-based painting engine, and what it does is that it uses your GPU to calculate how the paint sort of behaves and how the fluids sort of work around the canvas, and it's very interesting what it does. So let's try and start with the top here, what we have, which is pretty much the most interesting part of this program. So that's the big button here, so you just sort of click and drag it, and this is the fluidity of your paint. So let's do no fluidity. So we'll start with we'll start simple. So no fluidity, this is what happens, and you can see the more I press and the more I paint over and other old paint, the more I add a new paint on top of it, and it just kind of builds up, which is really cool. And you have like the build up here, and 100% adds a lot, and obviously, so this is kind of like the intensity of it. And so that's fluidity at 0, and let's turn it on all the way up to 100%. So what happens is that over previous paint, it kind of blends it and mixes it together for a little bit, and the duration and sort of the amount that it blends is dictated by those two buttons here on the side. So drying on and drying speed. So when drying is set to on, obviously it'll dry over time, so it'll stop moving after a while, and how long it keeps moving after you're done with your brush stroke is directed by this thing here. So if your drying speed is really high, for example, it's not gonna move much after your brush stroke. So you can see it stops right away, as if the paint was a lot thicker. And if you have it at 0, it's as if the paint was really wet and full of water, and it just keeps moving on the canvas. And now what we can do is turn it completely off, so there's no drying, so it never dries. And it's pretty interesting what it does. It'll just keep sort of moving around the canvas forever, and you can get those really cool abstract shapes. And then when you're happy with it, what you do is just you turn it back on, boop, and then it'll slowly slowly and solidify, and then you can keep moving and you can keep painting over that. So yeah, those are the biggest features of this tool I've found so far, because you can get like I said, so you can't import any images, but for now you can export them. So what I would do, for example, is I would start like a paint like something abstract like this in this tool, and then use that as a background for a new painting in Photoshop, for example. So you export this and you bring in Photoshop, and what's interesting here is you have like all the real highlights and the specular and the shadows, and you can use those to create new shapes in Photoshop. And I can see this as being really interesting. So like I said, I'll do a video speed paint of what you can do with this a little bit later this week. And yeah, so that's that for the main tools of this program. Now you have other subtle variants of what you can do here. So let me try to remember these. So fluid sharpness, this one I'm very confused by what it does. It doesn't seem to do anything. I think it's just you get a little bit more details. So if you have your fluidity set to a little bit lower value, you get a little bit more details in your brush stroke, I think, and how it blends it afterwards. But it seems to be the same thing. I don't know. So this one, yeah, I've never really understood what it does. Fluid smudge. What this does is, well, we'll see. And set to 100%. So it's kind of how much it mixes with the other paint. That's how long it'll keep mixing itself with the other paint next to it. So if you have it at fluidity at 0, and you're doing it here, and then you have, oops, it's at 0. So you can see like you're not interacting at all with the paint that's underneath. So it mixes it, but a little bit only. And if you have it all the way up, it does the same thing because fluidity is set to 0%. So if you turn this back on to 100, now we'll see what it actually does. And that's at 100%. And if we drop it, you can see it doesn't add much color. So it'll just mix the colors already there. So it's kind of subtle. Oops. Is it 100%? And then 0. Right, so it's the opposite. So this at 100%, it adds a lot of the color and mixes it with the rest, and at 0%, it kind of gets rid of it. And I would think that if you have build up at 0, blending at 100% here, you can kind of get the background color back. Nah, maybe not. But yeah, anyways, so that's it for the smudge thing. Mouse speed kind of useless, but you can imagine. So yeah, you can create, I guess, with a shorter stroke of the pen, you can create more deformation in your fluid, blah blah. Not that useful. Smudge chroma here is another one that's kind of subtle. So let's paint everything yellow. We'll get a better idea. And let's turn this back on to 100%. Build up. Alright, now we have a good background of yellow. What we're going to do is turn this to 100% to see what happens if we use, let's do blue, so it's going to be contrasting. So you see that on the edges here you get like some sort of yellowish kind of color, so it kind of mixes it a little bit more like it would normally, which is cool. And then if you have this to 0, it doesn't at all. So you'll see like on the edges there's no green. It's just you're just sort of overlaying blue over sort of a dried yellow. So there's no interaction between the two. So that's that for this mode. Now we have the color wheel. Nothing that special about that. And then underneath here the little 5 buttons are just for fine tuning the colors that you selected. You have high quality on or off. Very, very subtle. What it does is just the quality of the highlights on the on the paint here on the edges where there are highlights. But yeah, at the bottom here, brush size, nothing crazy. Minimum brush size. So you can imagine that if you press it just a little bit, the brush just does a small stroke, and the more you apply, the wider it is, and that's the minimum size. What it does, and also the higher it is, the bigger the minimum size is going to be. So blending here, what it does, basically, if you have it at 0, it doesn't do anything to the paint underneath. So let me try to do a little bit of build up here. So you can see it doesn't deform much of what's underneath. So in this case, since I have a little bit of build up, it's going to add a little bit of paint. But that's pretty much it. And if you have blending set to all the way up to 100%, it'll deform what's underneath. So it'll have an effect on whatever you painted previously. And the build up is just the amount, like I said previously, the amount of paint you're adding. So if you go all the way up, you get a lot of paint, and that's too much. So on the side here, you have sort of the tweaks you can do to your brushes. So the brushes are very limited so far. There's only like a handful of them, like 6 or around that number. But what you can do is for each of them, you can select. You have 2 options. So you can select the bristle size and the amount of bristles. And the amount of bristles is, so if you have this one, for example, it's going to be like only a couple strokes, and if you turn this back on all the way up, it's going to be a much denser brush. And then the brush size is how big those bristles are. So in this case, you're going to get finer details if you want to do hair, for example, and that kind of stuff. And bigger ones, there you go, you get the idea. So that's that covers pretty much all of it. And if you have like a, once you're done, this is like how the GPU sort of interprets the paints on the canvas. So if you have if you want to drop this down to 0, you get no bump at all. So there's no height to your paint. And the more you turn this back on, the more I guess the more elevated the paint is going to be. For this, good numbers. It's anything like 50% and below. Anything over that turns into like the contrast is too high and it looks kind of crappy. The glossiness is how much the highlights, how strong the highlights are. So you can see you can go over 100% and under 0%, which is in kind of like the Twilight Zone. Don't do that because it starts to look like nonsense. Yeah, like 50% and up, pretty good. And the diffusion is kind of how much the specular diffuses itself on the rest of the paint. So if you want something really wet, you go lower diffusion. If you want to go somewhere that looks a little bit more like plastic, for example, you up the diffusion a little bit more. And the metallic is the color of your shadows. So the more metallic it is, the darker it's going to be, and the less metallic, the more the lighter the shadow is going to be. So if you have metallic 100%, the shadow is going to be all black, and it tends to look kind of bad. So I like to keep it at 0. And then opacity, yeah, that's it. So opacity is kind of the same thing as here. If you go down with the layers, you have visibility on or off for a particular layer, and you have 3 blending modes. So let's say I have this down here, up here, I mean, and then I have something else underneath. And so right now it's set to normal, and there's only 3 blend modes. Like I said, alpha version, so there's not much options to choose from, but there's the normal version, and then there's what looks like, I don't know, like overlay for Photoshop, the equivalent. And then you have multiply, kind of. Yeah, it's kind of like a weird mix of color, but yeah, one adds the color, the other one sort of seems like it subtracts them, or not subtract them, but multiplies them or something. Not crazy so far, but hey, at least there's something there. And like I said, if you want to delete the layer, you just click it and drag it out the window. For now, it doesn't work when Camtasia is working for some reason, so I have to stop it. I have to stop the recording for this to work. And if you want to add some more, just click on here, the little things. And yeah, that's pretty much it for this program. So I covered all of the different tools that they have, and they keep adding some more regularly. So I would I would check the link in the description below and check, go on their page and see what everything does. And on there you have all the different hotkeys and all this stuff if you want to memorize them. But yeah, so overall it's pretty interesting. So I don't know, I'll try to do speed paint of the using this tool, and we'll see what happens next. But it's looking, at least in the it's looking really nice so far. And for the amount of stuff that they can still put in, I'm very hopeful for this program. So keep an eye open and watch out for the next video. Doing a speed paint using Verve painting tool. So that's it for today, guys. I will see you guys next time. Bye bye.